one of the questions that I'm faced with very often when deciding whether somebody should file a Chapter 7 or Chapter 13 bankruptcy is assets. And what I mean by assets, I mean certain assets that are not protected by the bankruptcy code. What that means is, and I gave an example previously of a car that maybe the vehicle is worth $40,000 and doesn't have a loan on it. So there's a significant amount of equity in that car. And if we were to look at a Chapter 7 bankruptcy, there's a strong possibility that the bankruptcy court might say, well, let's use that equity to pay off some of your debt. Another example, and this is a fairly common example, is where parents put their children's names on their deeds. So what ends up happening is the parents are thinking about estate planning, and they will list all of their children as survivors on their deeds to avoid probate. The downfall is that that now becomes an asset of your estate. Once you have an asset of your estate that is not protected because it's not your home, you have to value that asset. And again, if you were to file Chapter 7, the question becomes, can that asset be liquidated or used to pay down some of your debt? Now, some other examples might be non-retirement accounts. Many people have mutual fund accounts that aren't retirement accounts, where they keep track of their own investments for their retirement, but they're not IRAs, 401ks, 403bs. And that's looked at as if it's cash in the bank. And again, we can protect some of it depending on how much it is. But the question is, what's the trade-off? So most of the time, we will look in those particular circumstances, not wanting to surrender the value of this asset or give it up, we'll look at the Chapter 13 bankruptcy. And the reason why we look at a Chapter 13 bankruptcy is a Chapter 13 bankruptcy allows you to keep your assets that are not protected versus possibly surrendering your assets that are not protected. And let me go back to the example of the parents with your name on the deed. When your parents put your name on the deed, that also opens up them to your liabilities. And what I mean by that is if a creditor obtains a judgment, they can record that against your parents' house. So you never want to put your burden or your financial situation onto somebody else. And you want to retain that asset because you want to keep your name on that house. You don't want anybody to be able to take that away from you or your parents. Well, what Chapter 13 does, in addition to allowing you to consolidate all of your debt, is pay back the debt over a period of time. And you may be paying back all of it or some of it. It depends on your financial situation. But it allows you to keep that asset separate and apart from what might be at the reach of creditors. So there's a real difference between what Chapter 13 and Chapter 7 can offer you. And like I said previously, sometimes people will say to me, you know, the trade-off is that I'm willing to surrender the vehicle because it's just not worth it. But sometimes you're not given that option. Sometimes, you know, you're being pressured by creditors, and there is this situation where we fall into a category that we have to keep. We have to keep that asset and protect that asset. And that's what Chapter 13 allows us to do.